Today I'm bringing you my top 5 must-draft Dynasty players going into the 2023 season. Before we get into it, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Comment down below your top 5 must-draft Dynasty players that you can't leave your leagues without. And let's get straight into my first player here. Jameson Williams, J-Mo, wide receiver 32 in the community. My wide receiver 24 has moved up 4 spots since I was prepping for this video. And that wide receiver 32 price is absolutely absurd. A top 12 wide receiver drafted a year ago, a top 12 draft pick drafted a year ago, excuse me. And you may be new to Dynasty and you're saying, well, why is he so low? But before I even tell you that, let me remind you what he did that last year in college. 2021, 78 receptions, 115 targets, over 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns. Dominator rating over 30%, a finalist for the Melinikoff Award, and that year as well was second in touchdowns in 2021 ahead of the wide receivers that we all are drafting ahead of him right now, that we love, of course. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson. Those are the players that he was clearly ahead of, surpassing and easily drafted ahead of in that NFL draft. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room and why he is so far down. Yes, he tears his ACL in the Natty game, so he missed that his first full rookie season until the last part of the season. I think he played about 4 games at the end there. Then he gets suspended for the first 6 games of this year coming into 2023, which is unfortunate. And yes, he will not return his ADP, in my opinion, as wide receiver 32. And if he does, that is phenomenal. And if he does, he might be even higher price. That's why he's a must-draft player right now before it gets too late. Now, with the suspension, it was a gambling situation. He placed a bet on the facility. I think it was in the parking lot. It was something absurd like that. It was a massive gray area for the NFL, and I think it should definitely be cleared up. At least it wasn't some sort of performance enhancement drugs or whatever the case may be that we've seen other issues arise. This is something that it was just a mistake that he did not know, which is great. Now, in a dynasty perspective, a lot of people saying, well, I'm fading J-Mo. That's why he's my wide receiver 32 plus, whatever the case may be. We don't play Dynasty for just 1 year. We play Dynasty for 2 to 4 years, sometimes 3 years, right? And I think a lot of people are fading him because of that, because they want to win now. Now, that's a little bit different when you're trying to build a hybrid team or maybe a futuristic team. Jameson, yeah, he may not be returning the ADP now, but next year, where he was being drafted this past year before he got suspended as wide receiver 17 in April. That's exactly why I truly believe we can see him going back up to, I would say 17, wide receiver 20 area, that we could be seeing him going in drafts in 2024. Now, when you look at this offense, you look at this team with Jared Goff, a lot of people are saying, well, I don't like Jared Goff. I don't believe in Jared Goff. I've never seen him really produce, or I don't believe that he might not be on this team. It's hard. I don't understand how that's the case, because it's hard to see Jared Goff fail coming into this year. With this supporting cast, with this offense, with this defense that we've seen, Jared Goff, I truly believe, could easily get a contract extension for another 2 to 3 years, maybe even 4 years, if you really want to think about it. I mean, you think of Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was a top wide receiver. You think of J-Mo once he stays on the field. Sam Laporta. You think of Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. This offensive line, this defense. It's hard to see Jared Goff walking away and maybe them getting another quarterback here, right? And now when you think of Jared Goff as well, where you're saying, well, I don't really love this, can he support wide receivers? We've seen Amon-Ra be a top 10 wide receiver. He was top 7 this past year. We've seen Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks be top fantasy relevant wide receivers as well. Do you remember that game a couple years ago? One of the highest scoring NFL game. One of the highest scoring NFL games with the Rams and Chiefs. Jared Goff was on the center. Jared Goff was cooking. Jared Goff also took a team to the Super Bowl. So we need to remember that. Yes, that may have been with a completely different head coach, and completely different team. But Jared Goff has proven that he could, withstand and uphold fantasy relevant wide receivers, especially someone like J-Mo. So if you're somebody willing to acquire Jameson, once again, wide receiver 32 in the community right now, I truly believe, once again, back in April, he was wide receiver 17. He can be as high as that. You can get him on a cheaper price right now if you're trying to trade for him. Here are some players going around him that is equal value according to Keep Trade Cut. Dameon Pierce, Treylon Burks, Christian Kirk, George Kittle, Michael Pittman. I think each and every one of you, if you knew J-Mo was going to play a full 17 games this year, you would all draft him above every single player I just named. I don't see what's the point. I don't see what's the problem right now. You don't want to wait a year. You don't want to wait 6 games. I'm drafting Jameson Williams every single time if I can. This past mock draft, he went at the 6-12. A month ago, he went at the 5-11. He is falling even more significantly since a month ago, and we already knew he was suspended a month ago. So I'm drafting JMO everywhere I can. My second must-draft player coming on my list here, and that is Hollywood Brown. Marquise Brown, wide receiver 37 in the community, my wide receiver 30. And yes, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Kyler Murray is going to miss some time, right? Kyler Murray, we don't really know when that timeline is. We do believe it might be in the middle of the season. Could be projected to come back in the middle of the season. But he is the reason why Hollywood Brown is falling this far. Who's going to be the quarterback under center for the first couple weeks? And is that really going to be working out for Hollywood? But let me remind you what Kyler Murray and Hollywood did this past year in the connection they had. Weeks 1 to 6 before Hollywood Brown got injured. 34 receptions, over 64 targets, over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaging 18.3 fantasy points per game. He was a wide receiver 5. If you were to extrapolate that weeks 1 to 6, you could probably see it on your screen right now. Over 122 receptions, over 180 targets, over 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. He would have finished as a wide receiver 5 if he was on that pace for, as we saw from weeks 1 to 6. Obviously, that is not the case. He did miss some time. Kyler Murray missed the second half of the season. If you can get a wide receiver that is tied to a quarterback that can easily produce fantasy relevant wide receivers every single day in the 7th round, like I did, you can probably see on your screen, I got him at the 7-1 in our latest mock draft Dynasty startup at this 7-4 as my wide receiver 4. I'm doing that every single day. Okay, yes, I know this team may not be in a position where they're going to compete, or maybe they'd be in position to draft another wide receiver. If that's the case, that's okay. I'm not saying Hollywood Brown can't produce as a wide receiver 2. He can, as my wide receiver 4, right? I mean, in this scenario, if you're saying I got Hollywood Brown the 7-4 and they go out and get another Marvin Harrison Jr., for example, and Hollywood Brown still on this team, I'm okay with that because I still believe he's going to return that wide receiver 37 ADP. This is a perfect opportunity. And if you were trying to trade for him, once again, I think each and every one of you would rather have Hollywood Brown. Let me know in the comments for these players according to the community right now. A Devon Achane, who is currently valued higher than Hollywood Brown. A Kirk Cousins, I think he can get a little bit more. DeAndre Swift, an Alexander Madison, and an Amari Cooper. Those 5 players are all valued higher than Hollywood Brown currently right now. And you can either get more in return or it can be an even swap. Definitely go try it out. But once again, wide receiver 37, my wide receiver 30 tied to Kyler Murray, who I have had a little bit of hate for in the past, but I'm still going to believe because he is a top elite quarterback in this community. So once again, draft Hollywood Brown if you can. Before I get into my third player, guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Please go to flogfantasy.com, the best way to support what Zach and I are doing here. Not only do you get our articles, our rankings, our bonus content, and so much more, you get all the other content from all the content creators that are on the website as well. You only get 30% off at sign up when you do sign up using the Mother Flocker tier using promo code LAND. So once again, flogfantasy.com/land. Let's get straight into the third player here on my list. Third must draft player, a running back, and that is Cam Akers. According to the community right now, RB23. Here's my RB21 right now. Yes, he had a terrible first half of the season, and yes, he tore his Achilles, which is probably one of the worst injuries for a running back. But if you look at what he did in the second half of the season, that's where I really want to focus on. Weeks 13 to 18 is pretty phenomenal. Okay, 104 attempts, averaging 17 attempts per game, over 500 yards, averaging 85 yards per game, 6 touchdowns, averaging 17.7 fantasy points per game. He finished a running back for weeks 13 to 18. He was a league winner for you if you had Cam Akers in the second half of the season. Now, if Cam Akers if you were to extrapolate that and you say, hey, can he play that in a full season? He would have finished as the RB5, which is crazy. And within that span, weeks 13 to 18, he was averaging a 73% snap share. That is the highest Cam Akers has had in his career. His rookie season, where he was up and down, And you know, he did deal with some injuries, and once again, it was his rookie season. The highest snap percentage he's ever gotten before weeks 13 to 18 of this past year was 55% snap share, and that was in week 13 of 2022. Excuse me, of 2020, which is absolutely mind-boggling when you think of it. Now, yes, Cam Akers is on a contract year, another year removed from the Achilles injury, and I still believe this offense is a high-powered offense if these players can stay healthy. You have Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald. They're going to have to obviously maneuver a couple things, and they may not have the best offensive line anymore, whatever the case may be. But Cam Akers, if we did what he did behind a bad offensive line, finishing, you know, weeks 13 to 18 as a wide receiver 4, averaging 17.7 fantasy points per game, I'm going to take that chance on Cam Akers. Now, this is more in a win now scenario. So if you're in a win now building team, or maybe you can get Cam Akers as your RB3, maybe even RB4 if he falls to you, this is a perfect opportunity going into this year. So Cam Akers, my next must draft player going into 2023. My next must draft player, once again, you guys have heard this name many of times in our redraft channel, our dynasty channel, and this is, I think, one of the best values you can get right now in Dynasty, and that is Elijah Moore, wide receiver 39 in the community, my wide receiver 29 in my rankings. And you must have heard so many takes from me from Elijah Moore, and if you're new here, that's okay. I'm going to try and tell you as much as possible and a little as possible, so I'm not wringing out so much information of all the stuff I bought about Elijah Moore. I'll try to keep it nice, short, and simple. But we have to look at the opportunity that Elijah Moore is stepping into. He was drafted with the Jets, a quarterback room that hasn't been successful with Zach Wilson, Mike White, and Joe Flacco has been up and down, hasn't been consistent with that offense. He wasn't the priority in that offense. He had a lot of beef with the offensive coordinator, which made him sit out for 2 games this past year. Garrett Wilson, they bring him in. He's a wide receiver 2, which is fine. He's also the wide receiver 2 with the Cleveland Browns. But when you think of this offense now going with Deshaun Watson, and the history that Deshaun Watson is bringing as a top 5 quarterback, and a top quarterback that has produced multiple fantasy relevant wide receivers in the past, like a DeAndre Hopkins, like a Brandon Cooks, like a Will Fuller, the list can go on. I am really confident that Elijah Moore is going to be a weapon in this offense. It can easily be a top 20 wide receiver coming into the 2023 season, and you're getting him right now, according to community, as the wide receiver 29. I don't see how he is going to finish outside of wide receiver 39. I truly believe next year Elijah Moore is going to be worth a first-round pick, a late first-round pick. That's exactly where we're going to be evaluating Elijah Moore. Deshaun Watson is with this team for the foreseeable future. Same thing with Elijah Moore if they do give him that contract extension, which I do believe they will. So once again, we need to remember Deshaun Watson, a successful quarterback who has been a top 5 quarterback in the past outside of his rookie and this past year, and also has produced fantasy relevant wide receivers. Take it with a grain of salt as I say this, as what I'm about to say. Go watch that preseason game with Deshaun Watson and Elijah Moore, and how he was targeting him and how creative they were getting with Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore, I have him in almost every single one of my leagues. I think I have him over in 80% of my leagues right now, in my Dynasty redraft leagues, and so much more. Elijah Moore is a league winner coming into this year, a must draft, a wide receiver, a league winner, and a my guy in 2023. My next must draft player, also I have bought him multiple times in my redraft and Dynasty channel. Wanted to bring him again because I do believe he's getting a little bit of respect, but not really reflecting in the respect in the Dynasty startup mock drafts, and that is James Cook, RB21 in the community by RB21. So we are paired with the community right now. But obviously, limited opportunities in 2021, as you can probably see it on your screen. Only 91 attempts, just over 500 yards, barely got work in the air, finished RB44, only got 25% snap share. But it's the efficiency that he got when he got the ball. Once again, you should probably see that on your screen here again. First in breakaway runs, second in true yards per carry, third in yards per touch, averaging 8.8 yards per carry and 8.6 yards per catch. James Cook was getting so much, was doing so much with the opportunity that he was given, the limited opportunity that he was given. Now Devin Singletary is no longer on this team. He is with the Houston Texans, and I truly believe James Cook could easily be the first, second, and third down back on this team. Yes, Damian Harris is on this team, but only has a 1-year contract. He's currently dealing with the injury, and I do believe for the future, James Cook, we can easily see him getting 50, 60, 70 plus targets coming into the 2023 season. Another thing I want to really want to hit on that I've also brought in our redraft league is a high-powered offense that James Cook is connected with. Josh Allen, a high-powered quarterback. Bills were 8th in passing yards per game this past year. Josh Allen was also ranked 7th highest in checkdown ranks amongst quarterbacks. A lot of people saying, well, Josh Allen's the true running back. If he is, that's okay, because he's still going to throw the ball to James Cook. And that's exactly how you can get James Cook right now. He's being drafted, depending on how you're building your team, as an RB3, RB4. I think he can easily be a good RB2, solidified RB2 coming into the 2023 season. And I think we are missing out on the opportunity here for a breakout season for James Cook. So once again, James Cook, Elijah Moore, you have Cam Akers, Hollywood Brown, and Jameson Williams. Those are my 5 must draft players going into Dynasty in 2023, guys. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh,
it's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.